The people are the most critical element that we ever have in anything that we do. No matter if you work in a team, no matter if you're supervising, leading, or if you're a one-man, one-woman shop, without the right people, you've got nothing. When someone has to be evacuated out in the middle of the night, coming in on night vision goggles at 50 feet off the ground, you know that what you are doing tonight, it's life or death.
Coming to the stage to help us learn how to empower and trust our people, like our business and our lives depend on it. Please join me in welcoming best-selling author, thought leader, and donut lover, Lieutenant Colonel Jason Harris.
Good morning. Let's try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
That's what it feels like to have that many people in the audience. Anyone in here ever experienced that moment of absolute fear and terror, like standing on a stage in front of 3,000 plus people? Or perhaps you've had that moment where you have experienced absolute exhilaration, like Disney World level exhilaration. Anybody had that moment? What about that moment where those two things cross at the exact same time? Well, I've had those moments throughout the course of my military career. And as I review those moments, I realized that at the intersection of fear and exhilaration, excitement is one word: trust. So as I reviewed that, I thought about this one time because I wanted to be able to give you an example of what that looks like in action. So at the end of my freshman year of college at the Air Force Academy, I signed up for a leadership program. I was 19 years old. I thought it would be really cool to do this program called Airmanship 490. Now, for those who are unaware what that means, it's actually called skydiving. For those who don't know what skydiving is, it is jumping out of a perfectly good airplane for no good reason at all. Now, you're probably wondering, well, Jason, why would you do such a thing? Well, number one, I'm fourth generation military. And my grandfather, my mother, who also served in the military, her father, he was a paratrooper in the United States Army. So I figured I'd make the old man proud. I'd get my jump wings, and I'd actually make these jump boots useful for what they were supposed to be for. So I signed up for this program, and it's the middle of the summertime, and day one, Monday morning, they first off do a physical fitness test. Make sure that you're physically fit to jump out of this airplane, or in my case, get pushed out. No big deal. Not a lot required to get pushed out, right? And then they start training us. So they go through everything that's required to be able to do this thing correctly, this idea of jumping out of an airplane. Then by day 3, you are knee-deep into everything that could go wrong. It's about a day and a half, 2 days of everything that could go wrong. Who knew falling out of an airplane would be that complicated? Talk about safety, right? And then on Friday of the exact same week, we were getting ready to do our very first jump out of that airplane. Monday, same week, Friday, it's time to show and prove. Now, if you're curious, if anyone in here has actually gone and done skydiving in the civilian world, you had a person attached to you called a tandem jump. Not for us, not for those whose frontal lobes weren't fully developed. They thought it would be wise to allow us to jump out all by ourselves. So it's Friday morning. It's a beautiful day in Colorado. We go into the hangar. We throw our parachutes on. We're looking at each other going, man, are we really going to do this? Yep, we are. Is this really stupid? Yep, probably is. Could we die? Yes. We walk out to the airplane. As we walk out to the airplane, we're looking at each other with nervous laughter. You know, that laughter like, I'm really scared, but I don't want to admit to you how scared I am. We climb into the airplane. They get it started. We taxi out to the runway. They add power to the airplane. We start rolling down the runway, and all of a sudden, I begin to freak out. The airplane begins to break ground, climbing away, and I hear a loud noise of wind coming through the back door that someone left open. I am beginning to freak out. And what you have to understand is part of the reason why I'm freaking out in this moment was because I don't want to fall out before I get a chance to get pushed out, and I'm also afraid of heights. True story. And then I look at the jump master, and he looks and he goes, no, we're good. And everybody else is acting like they know what they're doing, and they're acting calm. So I figure I'll just play it calm and act like I know what I'm doing. No big deal. No big deal. We get up to 4,000 feet above the ground. At 4,000 feet, the idea is that you will be able to jump out of the airplane. You'll have 10 seconds of free fall. That means count to 10 as you're falling towards the ground, and then you pull your parachute. Now, if something goes wrong, they had this device. It's called an automatic activation device. Safety, it's priority number one, right? So it's automatic activation device that if you got to 17 seconds and you lost count, got confused or whatever, it would fire off for you and help you get to the ground safely. Cool, 4,000 feet, looking at the eye level with the Rocky Mountains, and I'm excited. I'm looking at all the beauty and the glory. That comes to a screeching halt when the jump master says, stand by. I was the last guy in the airplane. That meant I was the first guy out. So that meant slide down by the open door. Okay, cool. Act calm. Act like you know what you're doing. Look to the back of the plane at your friends and see what they have to say. Listen to their words of encouragement. Some of them start with F. Some of them start with B. Some of them are four-letter words. Some of it says, don't be A. You can fill in the blanks. You're probably smarter than I am. And I says, it's okay. I'm not going to be that, but I might scream like that, but it's okay. So slide to the door. Then he says, stand in the door. That means I got to get down on a knee, put my hand at the edge of this open door, put my head out the window or out the door. The wind starts hitting my face. I look down at the ground. I start panicking and thinking, that is a long way down, and this is really stupid. But I'm there, and he's kind of blocking my path as the jump master because he's got to help me to go. And I can't really back out at this point in time. And so as I'm looking down at the ground thinking this is stupid, we get across the drop zone. He says, go. And as I stood in the door, I looked back at him with all the courage I could muster, and I said, no. This is stupid. So we keep going across the drop zone. There's only so much time before they got to turn around and do it again, and they only have so much time before they got to get everybody off. So he figures I need a little bit more encouragement. So we keep going across the drop zone. He says, go. Shoves me out of the airplane. I start tumbling through the sky. Ground, sky, ground, sky, ground, sky. That means I'm actually completely out of position. I'm completely tumbling through the sky, and I am all kinds of confused. I have forgot to start my count to 10, and it's not looking so pretty right now. I am doing everything they taught me in those 2 days of what not to do. And in this moment, the thing that I realize is that you all have probably heard the statement that says, you don't rise to the occasion, but you fall to the level of your training. Anyone ever heard that? Anyone ever use that on their teams? Well, in that moment, I was falling to the level of my training, nearing terminal velocity, 100-something miles an hour. It was coming really fast. And then I realized, wait, I forgot to count. Wait, I'm supposed to straighten up. Wait, I'm supposed to be staring at the ground. So I remembered my training. So I arched my body, and as I arched my body, my pelvis started facing towards the ground, allowing my weight to pull me down. Now I'm staring at the ground going, oh my God, this is coming up really fast. And then I was like, wait, I got to count. I've probably been falling for about 10 seconds. Let me count just 2 more potatoes. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Cool, what's the next part? Okay, remember, think. 1 hand behind your head, 1 hand behind your back. Throw out your drag chute. I toss out my drag chute, and everything just slowed down. Drag chute comes out, grabs the wind, pulls the parachute out of the pack. It yanks my straps, yanks my harness, and all of a sudden I stop. And I realize I am now floating through the sky. I look and I make sure everything is still there. Everything, sir, I know what you're wondering. Everything is still there. And then I look up and I'm going through my checklist. Canopy is good. Visor's good. Helmet's good. One-way transmitter is good. Cool. Harness, everything good. Risers work. Everything is in place. And I begin to realize I have been trained for this and I'm ready to do this. And in that moment, I then begin to take in the peace and serenity of floating through the sky over the Rocky Mountains. And I am screaming at the top of my lungs, I am on top of the world. And then it all came to another screeching halt when I hit the ground. Yeah, I hit pretty hard that first landing. But any landing you can walk away from is a good landing, right? Now, I know as you guys are listening to that, you're probably thinking, well, Jason, you were instructed by some veteran Army paratroopers, and they knew exactly how to train you. Wrong. We were taught by fellow Air Force Academy college cadets that were either the same age as me or perhaps 1 or 2 years older than me. None of us were possibly even legal to drink yet. Our frontal lobes definitely were not fully formed yet. And somehow the Air Force thought it was wise. The administrator, she probably would never approve of that, right? But somehow the Air Force thought it was wise to allow us to train each other and allow us to kick each other out of a perfectly good airplane. How can we do that? And how does that apply to you? The reason that we were able to do that was because we had the right trusted training in place. We had trusted training, and we were able to validate that training. We had trusted processes, and we were able to validate that process. We were able to validate that people understood before we allowed them to get pushed out of that airplane. And then we fully trusted and empower those young people to execute the job. So right now, as I start talking about a little bit more about trust, I want you guys to consider this. In your organizations, when it comes to safety, when it comes to risk management, when it comes to the things that are happening on a daily basis to keep people safe, are you prepared to have your people jump out of that airplane? Is your training sufficient enough that you can line people up in the door of that airplane and push them out with their own parachute by themselves, and they would be able to remember how to execute that checklist? If not, why not? Now, let me give you the business case for trust. The business case for trust goes a little bit like this. On the left side of that slide, you see there, that is what individuals get when they have trust. That is what the organizations get. In an organizational environment, the organizations get the numbers that are on the left side. And on the right side of that slide, that is what individuals in a high-trust organization get. That is the business case for trust. Left side of the slide, the organization. Right side is individuals in a high-trust organization. Now, take a moment. I want you to consider, what does your organization look like in comparison? Is your organization considered a high-trust organization? If not, why not? And what can you do differently to make that happen? Well, I'm glad you asked. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I want to give you a stat. My team and I, we led a research project on the national trust and the national study on trust and leadership in the workplace. And as we went through this study, we were looking at various aspects of trust and leadership in organizations in working America. And one of the number one things that we looked at that we found was 65% of working Americans, they researched the culture of a company before accepting a job with them. Now, perhaps some of you in here are involved in hiring in your company. And perhaps every one of you know what it's like to try to find talent right now. Perhaps you're looking for good talent in your organizations. So consider that the people that you are looking for, they are looking at you before you find them, and they're looking at what the culture of your organization looks like. What does that culture look like? And are you attracting them or are you repelling them? And that culture, if you have the right culture, if you have a high trust culture, you likely also have a very high safety culture as well, because this factors in to safety. So what does that culture look like, and what will people find when they do the research on your organization, especially if you're a leader in that organization and you're responsible for talent acquisition? What does that look like? Now, as I talk about the basic levels of trust, let me take you on a journey about what a higher level of trust looks like. When I talk about a higher level of trust, I want you to consider that there's two types of trust that I deal in. The two types of trust that I deal in is relational trust, relationships, connectivity to people in the workplace, and functional trust, which is nothing more than a fancy word for competency, training. So I want you to think about those two types of trust and how they apply within your organization and how they apply to you individually, relational trust and functional trust. And then I want you to think about the level of trust that it takes for those Delta Force operators in the middle of the night to go and take out a terrorist cell. I want you to think about Navy SEAL Team 6 in the middle of the night in an aircraft over the open ocean, jumping out of that aircraft to land on a Navy vessel in the middle of the night for 3 different snipers to each take a single shot to rescue an American hostage. I want you to think about those Air Force Special Operations air crews that fly Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and other special operators into environments that are unknown in the middle of the night vision goggles, 50 feet off the ground. And they have to hit their target plus or minus 30 seconds, no matter what, or the mission could fail and lives could be lost. That is what I call no-fail trust. No-fail trust is the idea of being able to deliver when the stakes are high, being able to deliver when jobs and lives are on the line, being able to deliver when failure is not an option. Right now, in every single one of your workplaces, failure is not an option. Now, perhaps there is somebody who's listening to me right now and they say, well, Jason, that's really cool because you were in combat. We just do X. We just do Y. And I would tell you, I disagree with you. And here's why. Because you all are in the battle and the combat of life. You all are in the combat of the work environment. You all are in the combat of success. And it is absolutely critical that you approach it from the idea that failure is not an option. Because if you don't do your job in the sense of safety, people's lives are on the line. People can lose digits. People can be permanently injured if you all don't create the correct workplace environment. And if you guys don't have that level of no-fail trust that I'm going to show you and talk to you about. So when I talk about that idea of no-fail trust, now I want to actually show it to you in action. You see, when I graduated college in 2001, the Air Force says, hey, congratulations, we're going to send you to pilot training. They sent me to Columbus, Mississippi. I learned how to fly, and the amazing thing is the Air Force has this uncanny way of putting you in these weird situations. I'm in pilot training down in Columbus, Mississippi, and I go from flying a Cessna 172, which you could probably pedal a bike faster than, to now flying a twin-engine jet. I'm not even old enough to legally rent a car at Hertz Rental Car without extra insurance. And the Air Force says, congratulations, you can fly a jet at 200 or 300 miles an hour. They said, well, we'll up the ante and we'll let you fly inches apart from another person whose frontal lobe isn't fully developed, who can't legally rent a car from Hertz without extra insurance. And we'll put you guys inches apart. Good luck. Again, trusted training, trusted processes. What does that look like in your organization? So after getting my wings, the Air Force said, congratulations, we're going to send you to fly the C-130. I go to fly the C-130, and as I learned how to fly the C-130, I fell in love with the idea of a combat crew. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this airplane and the crew. This crew is made up of 6 people, the combat crew of 6 people. In the front left seat, you have the aircraft commander or the CEO of the airplane. In the front right seat, you have the co-pilot who knows as much, if not more, than that aircraft commander, but just doesn't have as much experience. So they're complementary to each other. And then right behind them in that middle seat is our flight engineer. The flight engineer, they know where all the buttons, knobs, and rheostats are at in that aircraft. And then to the rear right of us, we have a navigator. That navigator, they are there to help navigate us through some of the most treacherous terrain. Imagine a 150,000-pound 4-engine airplane with people, with equipment in the back, flying at 200 feet off the deck through mountainous environments where people are trying to take you out of the sky. And it's the navigator's job to navigate us through those treacherous environments. And then in the back of the airplane, we have one of the most important crew members there on the crew. That's our load master. Load master, young person, 17, 18, 19 years old, fresh out of high school. They're responsible for a lot. Now, let me ask you all a question real quick. You guys could just, I'm going to ask the question, you guys just sound off with a resounding yes or no. Would you trust a 17, 18, 19-year-old video game expert, possibly dwelling in this guy's basement or his attic, would you trust him with your luxury automobile or your nice truck? No, didn't think so. Ma'am, administrator, would you trust that same young person? Would you trust him with your book of business? No, there was no hesitation whatsoever. Would you trust that same young person with your life? We trust those load masters every single day with our lives. We trust those young people on the back of our airplane. They are responsible for more than 80% of the aircraft. They're responsible for loading the aircraft up, loading equipment, loading people, determining where things go. Does it go in the front of the airplane, in the back of the airplane, in the middle of the airplane? Do I use material straps? Do I use chains? Do I use a 5,000-pound tie-down? Do I use a 10,000-pound strap? a lot of decisions are being made by those young people. And oftentimes they are fresh out of high school. And so I want you to imagine now, I want you to picture that you're sitting in the cockpit with me in my C-130. And as you're sitting in that cockpit of that C-130, I want you to imagine that we're sitting at about 20,000 feet, circa 2004. We're over Iraq, and we're going to fly a mission today. As you're sitting in that airplane, I want you to just take a whiff of the smell, and you're going to smell 50-year-old dirt in that airplane and funk and stank. But I want you to imagine that you're sitting in there, and you're feeling what it feels like to be in that cockpit. You've got on the flak vest, we've just removed our headsets and put on our helmets because we're about to run our combat entry checklist. And as we run our combat entry checklist, everybody goes through their procedures. We put our helmets on, drop those night vision goggles down, and then you begin to see a green glow of the night sky. That now gives you an awareness of everything out there that is designed to take us out of the sky. And as we run through this combat entry checklist, it starts in the back of the airplane, comes all the way up to the front, and the flight engineer says, checklist complete. In that moment that the flight engineer says checklist complete, I then pull the throttles back to the idle position. That means we are about to start descending down into chaos. As we start descending down, we're aiming towards the airfield, and we're looking out for threats, and we continue to run additional checks. At 20 miles, we want to do an altitude and distance check. At 15 miles, we do another one. At 10 miles, it's our last opportunity to do a 360-degree turn to allow us to get on the correct altitude. At a mile out from the runway, we are only about 300 feet above the ground. We are now looking at the runway. We continue to configure the airplane. We get about 50 feet above the runway, and I begin to transition my eyes towards the back end of the runway so that I can maintain lateral distance left and right of the center line of the runway. And as I am pulling the final bit of power off, getting ready to make the perfect landing, it is in that moment that I hear the loadmaster say, go around. And as that loadmaster says, go around, I don't pause, I don't hesitate, I don't think to question what that young person has just commanded me to do. Immediately, I add full power to the airplane. I bring the yoke to 7 degrees nose high. I look at you, my co-pilot, and I say flaps to 50%. You grab your left hand and you bring the flap lever to the 50% detent. As we start breaking ground, you then verify that we're climbing away, and you say positive rate. And as you say positive rate, that lets me know that we are actually climbing away from the ground. I then look at you and I say gear up. You take your left hand and you bring the gear handle to the up position. We continue to climb away from the ground, climbing away from whatever the danger was that caused that loadmaster to command the go around. And it's not until we're safely away from whatever the danger was, safely away from the ground and fully deconfigured, that I will then say, Loadmaster, why did we go around? That young person, that loadmaster in the back of the airplane will say, Pilot, Commander, CEO of the airplane, the reason I commanded and directed you to go around was because there was a vehicle that you were unaware of. Pilot, CEO of the airplane, aircraft commander, the reason I commanded you to go around was because there was a gear malfunction that you were unaware of. Pilot, the reason I commanded to go around was because I could see what you could not see. That young person in the back of my airplane, they are able to see what I am unable to see. In your organizations, who are those people that are your load masters? Who are those people that are on the front lines that are able to see the things that you were unable to see? Who are those people out there in your organizations that actually see the safety hazards that are out there that need to be fixed, that need to be addressed? And more importantly, when they say go around, do you listen? Why or why not? You see, I am trained to listen to that load master. And I trust that load master because I know how they've been trained. I know what their process is. And I also know the checklist that they are following. So I have nothing but trust when they tell me to go around. Do you have that in your organization? If not, why not? And if not, what are you going to do differently to move your organization towards that, to create that safer organization? So that when someone commands a go around, when someone points out something that is wrong, when someone points out something that could cause someone to lose their life, it is addressed immediately and it is fixed. What can you do? Because the reality is that the people that are on our front lines, they are seeing our blind spots. And when they see our blind spots, it is up to us to ensure as leaders that we address those blind spots. Are you taking it seriously when those people speak up? One of the things that is happening in real time that I want you to understand when I tell that story about know, feel, trust, and action is that there are 7 critical skill sets that are operating at all times by all crew members and especially by that loadmaster. Professional knowledge, situational awareness, assertiveness, decision-making, communication, leadership, adaptability, and flexibility. At any given time, all of these things are running in conjunction with each other. If you were to rate yourself, this is how we solve problems, and this is how we get ahead of those problems. If you were to rate yourself, how would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 for each one of those? And then how are you training the people in your organizations to leverage and utilize these skill sets? This has the ability to save people's lives. Because preparation, it is the fuel that powers problem solving. Are you preparing your people to be able to solve problems at any given moment? If you're not, you're setting yourselves up for failure. There's a lot that I love to talk about trust. I'm going to just spend a few minutes talking to you how you can create these kind of organizations. These kind of organizations, they are built based on an organization that is about commitment over compliance. Now, I'm not talking about compliance like OSHA type stuff. I am talking about compliance of like shut up and color type stuff. Just know the difference, right? But before I get to there, I want to have you guys take a moment and look at this slide. This is the cockpit of my Boeing 777 airplane that I fly for a commercial airliner. Now, you're probably wondering what airline I fly for. I'll give you a couple of hints. We might lose your bag, but we won't beat you up. If you say Spirit, we'll fight. Wow. Almost tripped on a little screw up here. So, when you guys look at that slide, any idea, sir, how many buttons, knobs, and reel stats are in the cockpit of my Boeing 777? You're going to say 700. I like that. Sir, how about you? Any idea how many buttons, knobs, and reel stats are in the cockpit of my Boeing 777 airplane? 1,200. This guy thinks I'm brilliant. So I'm a good chocolate side. Ma'am, any idea how many buttons, knobs, and reel stats are in the cockpit of my airplane? 100. She took the easy route out. She thinks we're playing The Price is Right. There are over 500 buttons, knobs, and rheostats in the cockpit of my Boeing 777 airplane. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, Jason, do you know what they all mean? If every one of you in here promises to keep a secret, I'll tell you the truth. No. If you're afraid of flying, don't worry. It's safe. Trust me. Don't you just hate when someone says, just trust me? You're like, no, you haven't given me a reason to trust you yet. Here's what I want you to know. There are over 500 buttons, knobs, and rheostats in the cockpit of the airplane. What matters most is that I know the right button at the right time for the right reason. The right button at the right time for the right reason. Just like in your jobs, there's a lot of information for you to know, and it's imperative that you understand the right button at the right time for the right reason. But beyond that, what's really important is that you not only know that, but you have the ability to translate that to the people that work in your teams so that they understand how to select the right piece of information at the right time for the right reason to keep people safe. That's the challenge. Right button, right time for the right reason. And you do that through creating these environments that are commitment cultures, that commitment to the team, the commitment to the mission, to the organization, to the values. When you're creating this kind of organization, that means you have to have leaders that lead the way. And as leaders, they lead the way. They don't need a title to help them lead. Here's the interesting thing. 77% of working Americans from our study, they said that they will leave a company if they don't feel like they could trust their leadership, including 82% of Generation X, the highest of any generation. It's pretty significant. You don't get to a high-trust environment, you don't get to a commitment culture without good leadership. Leadership. I break it down into 3 simple personas. There's the leader, there's the manager, there's the boss. What's the difference? Well, the boss, you all know the type. Do as I say, not as I do. Shut up and color. I've got an open door policy, not for you to come in, but for me to come out and tell you what to do and micromanage you. You guys know the type. They're sitting to your left, blink twice, to your right 3 times. Please stop blinking. I'm just kidding, all right? The manager. You know the type. They want to manage people like they manage a spreadsheet. They want to manage people like they manage a project. You don't manage people. You manage things. You manage projects. You lead people. The leader. You all know the type. They lead with a level of respect. They lead with a level of commitment. They lead with kindness. They lead with compassion. And no, they don't coddle, but they do hold people accountable. That is what leaders do, and that's how they create this culture. And that is, leaders are essential to creating a safety culture. And here's the reality. You do not need to have a title to lead in an organization. You don't have to have that. And leaders are not born. We create leaders. So what are you doing to help create leaders in your organization? Now I'm going to ask you guys for a moment to do something with me. If your attention is distracted, come back to me for just a second. I want you guys to do this. Do me a favor. I want you to go back in your minds to when you first came into the workplace. Now, I know for some that's a short journey, and for others it's a long journey. But go back to when you first came into the workplace. And I want you to think about that person that you work with or the person you work for. And I want you to think about, were they a leader, a manager, or a boss? Were they a leader, a manager, or a boss? Some of you just had a very visceral response in a negative way. You remember that person who probably should have been called Richard. Forgive me, anyone whose name is Richard. Some of you all just had a very visceral response in a positive way. You got excited because you remember that person that was a leader that took care of you. And they're likely the reason why you're still here today. They're the reason why you have succeeded in what you've done, because they led you and they guided you and they mentored you. Now come back to present day. If I went into your workplace and I talked to the people that you work with, that works for you, what would they say about you? Would they say that you're a leader, a manager, or a boss? And why? The reality is, it doesn't matter where you are on that scale. It's your obligation to figure out how you can lead every single day. It's your obligation to get 0.1% better every single day. Leaders lead, managers maintain, and bosses bark. Which one are you going to be? Leaders lead. Which one are you going to be? Because it is your obligation as a leader, no matter what your title is, to earn the title of leader every single day. You want to create a safety culture? Earn your title of leader every single day. Set the example. Hold people accountable. Hold yourself accountable. Create that commitment culture, and you'll create that environment. How can you create that environment? I'll give you a couple of tips. It starts with psychological safety. Psychological safety, for those who are unaware, here's the definition. The belief that you won't be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. The idea that you won't be punished or humiliated. Perhaps you have been in that organization. Perhaps you remember the way you came up in the workplace, and it was just show up to the job site, shut up in color, and just watch and learn. Perhaps you've experienced that moment where you're sitting in a meeting and someone says, "Hey, go around. I got something I want to point out." And the de facto leader pulls out their double-barrel shotgun, cocks it, and blows brain matter all over the room. And everybody just steps back after that and says, "I won't say anything else because I saw what happened when the last person voiced a concern." That is not psychologically safe environments. If you want to have psychologically safe environments, you have to work to create that. If you want to have safe environments, you have to have psychologically safe environments so that people are able to feel comfortable speaking up, not being worried about how they're going to be treated once they speak up. In our study, this is what we discovered. 77% of working Americans, they need to feel psychologically safe at a company before they can see themselves staying with the company long term. We talked about talent acquisition. This is now talent retention. Little simple things you can do to retain your talent. Psychological safety. How can you create psychological safety in the workplace? I'll give you that in a second, but psychological safety, it's not given by a title, it's earned through trust. You earn that through trust. Through those two types of trust. Relational trust, functional trust. You know, oftentimes people they're told, "Hey, just go out there and figure it out on the job site." Can you imagine if they put me in the back of that airplane and said, "Just go jump"? Can you imagine if I took that load master and says, "Hey, here's the books, good luck. We're getting ready to fly into combat"? Hope you don't die. Think he or she would have been comfortable saying go around? Likely not. What does that look like in your organization? Because all too often what I'm seeing with companies that I work with, they don't have any trusted training in place. They don't have trusted processes in place. And they're expecting people to go out on the job site, put their lives in danger without being properly trained. And if you're not properly trained, you don't even know how to speak up and say that something is wrong. Or you're put into a position where there's no psychological safety and you're afraid to raise your hand to point out what's wrong. Figure out how you create that psychological safety. There's a simple thing you can do as a leader, no matter what your role is in the organization. People want three things. They want to be heard, they want to be understood, they want to be acknowledged. That's what leaders do. That's how you create this environment of psychological safety. That's how you create a commitment culture. Hear people, understand them, acknowledge them. Now, what was amazing is that I was excited when I first came up with this. For anybody in the Army, you know the term, huh, right? And I was like, that's really cool. And I told my wife, and my wife says, that's great, Jason. My wife really knows how to humble me. I'm not sure if anybody else has that in their home, but she really knows how to humble me. She says, honey, here's the deal. She goes, that's really cute. She goes, but understand this, Jason. I know that when I told you to take out the trash, I know you heard me because you were in earshot and you're not that deaf yet. She goes, and I know you understood me because we speak the same language. And she says, and I saw you acknowledge me because you nodded your head. She said, but that's not good enough. You got to actually get up off your rear end and you got to go actually take the trash out. So you need to take action. As a leader, don't just hear, understand, and acknowledge people. Make sure that you're taking action. Make sure that you are taking action when people bring you issues and they bring you the challenges. If they don't feel like you're taking action, if they don't feel like you're hearing, understanding, and acknowledging them, I promise you they will stop bringing you issues. I promise you they will stop saying go around. And some of them will stand back and wait for the train wreck to happen. Do you want to be that person that allows that to happen in your organization? One more thing I want to hit on. Commitment. Now, that's my beautiful daughter. She's 9 now. And I'm going to do something. I'm going to go off script for a second, like the administrator did. So I'm taking the key from your card. But here's the deal. Before I get to that, you guys are looking at that slide and you're wondering, is that bacon on that donut? Yes, it's bacon on a donut. Okay? Here's the thing. My daughter was 2 years old. I gave her a donut, and it was so cool to watch a kid lick the icing off a donut. And I realized this was pretty neat. So I would start taking her to daycare, and on Fridays, I'll figure, you know what, let's just pull over and grab donuts. 2 years old, we go and have donuts. Before you know it, it became an every Friday thing. Daddy-daughter donut dates. You know, when they read my entry, you guys are like, donuts? What is that about, right? What I realized is that I spent time with this little person. As I spent time with this little person, I created a connection. I built the level of accountability and the level of trust with this little person. We've built a bond that can't be broken. Connection, commitment. I do mine through donuts. How do you do it with the people that matter in your life? The people at home and the people in your workplace. How do you do that? So, when I'm on the road, I send something to my daughter every day to just let her know I'm thinking about her. So right now, I want you guys to do me a favor. I'm going to do a video, and on 3, I want you guys to say donuts. You guys ready for that? I'm like, seriously, on 3, we're going to say donuts, okay? 1, 2, 3. Yes! God, you know how cool that is? I've never done that before. I create connection through donuts. How do you create connection with your people? You want to create psychological safety. You want to have a safety culture. You want to create trust in your organizations. Figure out how to create connection. That's going to lead to commitment, that leads to accountability, that leads to trust. Do that in your home as well. Do that with the people that matter. Don't allow your significant other to become your insignificant other because you forgot or you didn't figure out a way to create that connection. Talent retention. You want to help people to stay in your organization? You want to give people reason to consider sticking with your organization? Create that connection with them. Get to know who they are. Get to know how they tick. Leaders ask for feedback. I'm going to ask you all to do me a huge favor. 2 purposes in this. 1, I want to get your feedback. 2, I want to give you something in exchange for that feedback. Some of you all have been taking pictures of the slides, and I appreciate that. So if you take a picture of this, give me your feedback. Do that QR code, give me the feedback. I will give you a PDF workbook that goes along with this keynote. I'll also give you a workbook that is around those 7 skill sets. And then I'll send you 4 free videos, and I promise you I will not spam you. I'm not into that. And so I'll ask you to do that, to give me that feedback. So as I get ready to wrap things up, I want you all to think about, and I'll put it back up here in a second before I finish up. I want you all to think about your role in your organization. I want you to think about your role within your role as far as being a leader. I want you to consider the trusted training that you have or don't have and what you can do to fix that and improve it. I want you to think about the trusted processes and how you can improve that. And I want you to think about how do you create that trust and empowerment in your organization. It is imperative that if you want to create a safety culture, that you earn your title of leader every single day. And it's an imperative that you all do what is necessary to lead from where you're at, to create that high trust safety culture, because people's lives are depending on it. Thank you very much.
Wow, he almost makes me want to skydive, but not quite. Thank you, Jason, for sharing your powerful insights on building a culture of no-fail trust. You've provided invaluable insight on leadership, accountability, and teamwork. Your message challenges us to elevate our approach to trust and excellence within our organizations. Thank you for your time, wisdom, and inspiring us to lead with confidence and purpose.
We've got people running out already. Tammy, I want to make sure everybody has a few important notes before you take off. So we want to thank you for attending today's keynote. But before you do exit, a few quick items. One, a representative will scan your registration badge as you exit for continuing education or discount program credits that you might need. Knowledge Hub sessions are happening throughout the event. You'll want to check your event guide or the mobile app for times. Jason, great presentation. He's also going to be meeting people in the attendees lounge. That's booth 629, directly following this session. Tammy, is there anything I forgot to mention the audience needs to know?
Yes, Greg, I've got you, though. The Expo Marketplace is officially open. Please follow the spotlight behind you and take the opportunity to network with our exhibitors and explore the innovative solutions that they have to offer. We encourage you to visit with them, engage in conversation, and discover new tools and strategies that can enhance your organization's safety journey. Let's make it a great day at OSC 2025.